International community not play a role to avoid a classic case of conflict in the country?
I think that's one reason why we have to take reports such as the one issued by the ICG seriously, because the international community at large has got various tools at its disposal. One tool is when international organizations, even if they're non-governmental organizations such as ICG, issue reports like the one they just did. My belief, I haven't spoken to the ICG, but based on previous reports, the intent sometimes is to have those reports generate dialogue within the country when stakeholders within the country can say, if this is how our country is being viewed by a credible organization, how can we as Cameroonians address the issues that are laid in here? It has to be the government, but it also has to be Cameroonian civil society organizations. It has to be professional organizations such as human rights organizations, women's groups, the Bar Association. It has to be political leaders, because invariably, as parties prepare to go into elections, they should be talking about party platforms. What lessons can they draw from a report like the one issued by ICG that can help them formulate a platform that would address the needs and concerns of ordinary Cameroonians? So I think the government has got some share of responsibility, obviously, because it's the government that is in charge. But I think there's a broad spectrum of actors that should get involved when you get this kind of call from the international community.
You know, can the donors not use their leverage, be it politically or financially, to be able to send strong messages to the government?
Well, my sense is that a lot of the donors do that. They probably don't do it in the arena of public diplomacy that non-governmental organizations would. But donors can only do that much. Donors are partners that try as much as possible to support the country as it moves forward. They can be partners, they can be supportive, they can advise, they can provide wise counsel, they can share experiences based on what they've seen in other countries. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's going to be incumbent upon us as Cameroonians to determine collectively in which direction we want to move our country. And when we make the right decision and the right choices, invariably the donors would follow. On the contrary, if we make the wrong choices, it doesn't matter how loud the donors speak, that invariably we're going to end up in the wrong place in history.
Can we say that the donors, the international donors, have been slow to criticize the regime or reluctant?
Well, I wouldn't paint the donor community with a broad...
The report says the international community has been reluctant to criticize the regime and seemingly willing to go along with the cat and mouse game of fake politics and economic reforms.
Well, I think part of the analysis in that specific point, part of it is right, in my opinion, in the sense that there seems to be a cat and mouse game that gets played by regimes that are recalcitrant, regimes that are not democratic, are not open, regimes that don't mean well for their people, in terms of giving the impression to the outside world that all is fine, even when they know that they're not delivering the services that their people need. And oftentimes, they wait for, if they have a difficult ambassador, they wait for the ambassador's tenure to be off. Then that ambassador goes and a new ambassador comes and takes 1 year to study the situation on the ground. And by the time that ambassador knows the situation and starts speaking out, that ambassador leaves and a new one comes. So regimes that don't mean well for their people have the habit. Have the habit of engaging in this cat and mouse game, and that is right. But at the same time, I would say that some members of the diplomatic community have been pretty critical about the situation in Cameroon and have not hesitated to speak out, whether it's on the issue of corruption, whether it's on the issue of the independence of the press or the judiciary, whether it's on the issue of human rights, that a number of diplomatic missions have spoken out. I would wish that they didn't speak out because we were performing so well that they would praise us rather than criticize us. But I think we should acknowledge those that have the courage to speak truth to power and to say very openly the things that we need to fix in our Cameroonian society.
Dr. Fomunyoh, thank you. We'll be right after the break. Welcome back to my one-on-one with Dr. Christopher Fomunyoh, who is a senior associate, the regional director for Central and West Africa at the National Democratic Institute, a non-governmental organization based in Washington. Doctor, on the 27th of April 2010, an interministerial delegation led by Emmanuel Fomunyoh, who is in charge of missions at the presidency, was abroad, in about 8 countries abroad, to meet with Cameroonians and the diaspora. During one of their exchanges, the main issue was the concern over the double nationality of Cameroonians and the right to vote. What do you think about the double nationality of Cameroonians and the rights to participate in the electoral process?
You know, I am surprised that here we are in the 21st century. Here we have countries, African countries, that are poorer than Cameroon: Benin, Mali, Senegal, even Niger, Gabon next door, allowing their citizens resident abroad to participate in political processes and electoral processes in their countries of birth and of origin. Many Cameroonians here saw Gabonese line up to vote in the last presidential elections, right here. We've seen Senegalese do the same. And I cannot understand why Cameroonians living abroad should not maintain that right that other Africans have come to enjoy. Just a few weeks ago, Kenya passed legislation to allow Kenyans abroad to participate in the political process of their country. There is so much to be gained from that. It happens not just with African countries, it happens all over the world. There's so much to be gained. There is an attachment. The symbolic value is so powerful to have Cameroonians feel attached to the fatherland. And that's one way to do it. Because, to be honest with ourselves, there are more Cameroonians resident on the national territory than there are Cameroonians abroad. And so I don't think that the outcome of an election is going to be influenced solely by the Cameroonians living abroad. But the fact that Cameroonians living abroad could feel that they are appreciated by the homeland, by the fatherland, that they have a sense of attachment to the fatherland, gives them that obligation to want to do something for their country. And I cannot, till today, I cannot understand why this issue is not being addressed. I'm surprised that the issue came up in one meeting, because I have had meetings with Cameroonians across the United States, in Atlanta, in Washington, in Denver. I have gone to Canada and met with Cameroonians in Montreal and in Ottawa. I was in Paris and met with Cameroonians. I went to Bonn in Germany and met with Cameroonians. And this is one of the first issues that Cameroonians raise. They just cannot understand why this issue has not been addressed.
What is the fear of the government, if at all they have to be involved in the electoral process?